Right, super. So there we go. Let's say thanks for joining us. Bear with me while I click buttons and let people in as we go. We're here to talk about resistance. As you know, we do these sessions in 20 minutes and we want to dig into it. So, it's obviously going to touch on trust and the lack of that being a reason why people resist. But we actually want to try and bring out the fact that resistance isn't it's something that's wrong with people. It's a natural response to the brain surviving its environment. So let's get into it. So resistance is normal. I don't know if you can see the words there on the right underneath this, but we will make it available afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it's Levent. Let me move this over here for a second, and I'll have to move it around as we go through the presentation. Change. It's processed as a threat, right? That's the basics. Anything that the brain hasn't processed before, anything new, hasn't necessarily got an existing wiring pattern, firing pattern that can predict whether that new thing is going to be safe, and therefore the brain treats it as a threat. That's really the crux of what we're dealing with, isn't it?
Yes, whenever something changes in our environment, brain has to predict anything that may harm us within that change. So what we call this is negativity bias of the brain. So it's very normal that when something changes, brain first scans for the threats or dangers inside that change, because the brain's first priority is to keep us alive.
Yeah, so again, we've said it before on the other webinars. The brain's job is to help us survive as efficiently as possible. And it's that efficiently bit that makes a big difference because it takes shortcuts to reduce the amount of glucose energy it consumes, right? So that's the bit we really need to understand so we know why people jump to the conclusions they do, make the assumptions they do, and how they process the world and treat any kind of change, in terms of guilty until proven innocent, rather than, it's not always a fear-based threat response, but it still processes something new, anything that is changed for that brain that it hasn't experienced before in that particular way. It has to work within the mechanism and the design of that mechanism, doesn't it? And I think that makes sense of the last two bullet points. So, when we say the brain favors certainty, routine, and safety, that's exactly what we're talking about. And the last point, as I said in the opening, resistance is a protection mechanism. It's not a disorder. There's not anything wrong with people that resist change. They've just got a brain that's evolved to respond in that way to what is being perceived in that moment as threat. So it's up to us. It's incumbent upon us to think about, are the signals we send in a threat to the other brain, and therefore we can understand why we see those kind of changes. So let's have a look. We can see that we haven't thought this through when it comes to where this little window's hanging, so you can see everything. Neurological roots of resistance. So, I mean, we've all heard of the amygdala, I guess, and there's some simple words around this, like it tags the unfamiliar as risky. We've just touched on that. Levent, what else can we say about that?
Yes, when amygdala perceives something as risky, we can say it takes the control. And prefrontal cortex has limited capacity under stress, because under stress, when amygdala takes the control, emotions override logic. I mean, we take our decisions based on what we feel. So if we are scared, it's most of the time a fight or flight response.
Yeah, exactly. So technically, for anyone interested, what that means is where that glucose energy gets consumed, if we're thinking rationally, is in the prefrontal cortex. If we're in this fight flight response mode, we've determined that there's some threat in our environment. That energy feeds the amygdala and the limbic system, the emotional response. So, it's just nature, right? It's biological fact. It's how we're designed to function as human beings to keep ourselves safe. So one of the things that the brain needs is trust, right? And we talk about words like trust, but we're talking really about oxytocin. And when we get the right signals from the environment, if we feel safe, we get a better chemical mix in our brains. But if we don't, I mean, Levent, you've got a great phrase, haven't you? You can't change unless you've got the support of your people. And you can't lead sustainable change unless you've got the support of your people. But can you elaborate on that about the if you haven't got any trust, there's no traction? Because I mean, you've seen it throughout your whole career at Toyota and in different places that you've run as the boss, the ultimate boss, of everything.
Yes, exactly. It's in fact very, very simple, but unfortunately, I learned it after I was 40, 45 years old. When people don't support you, you cannot be successful as a leader. You can be successful sometimes for a short period of time, but that success cannot be sustainable. So people have to support you if you want to be successful sustainably. If people feel threatened, if they are not working under psychological safety, even change, the word change itself is perceived as a threat. So if there is no trust between leaders and employees, if employees don't feel safe that leaders will protect them for not being harmed, then change is not possible. So their brains start protecting themselves, and this is what we call resistance to change. It's a pity because most leaders who call people acting this way, I mean, when projects become failing, many leaders are saying employees are resisting to change, but in fact they are just trying to protect their brain wiring. They are not resisting to change. They are just protecting them against any threat or harm.
Yeah, is it that again? We've got to stress the fact enough that it's a natural neurological response we're all designed to have. That we will defend ourselves. If we can't determine benefit and the signals we get from our environment, whether that comes from the boss or the system or the targets that's been imposed or KPIs, the new technology we've not adapted to or adjusted to yet, all of that can look like resistant behaviors, but it's not enough to look on that surface level and just how people act and react. We've got to get under the surface and understand what they believe, where their brain's at, what they're thinking about this situation, because that links into how they feel. And as you said earlier, it's how they feel will determine their actions. And, there's so much more we now know with the neuroscience we have available to us to be able to understand human behavior, and it just becomes so much clearer, doesn't it? It's much more of a mechanism. It's almost binary if you get down to cellular level, that you get input, process, output. It's almost like SIPOC, but a human brain level. The supplier is the world, the input is the signals through our senses, the process is what the brain does in terms of depolarizing cells and sending the signal on chemically, and the output is the customer is the behaviors and the output you give to other people. The customers are the people outside of yourself after that process has happened internally. So it's so normal, so natural, and we know so little about it in business. And a lot of what we've got in leadership and management, best practice and training, is devoid of any knowledge of neuroscience, and therefore quite often recommends doing things that actually work against the brain rather than for it. And if we package all of that up under terms like psychological safety, and it still remains a bit ambiguous and hard to understand. So, you put the neuroscience to it, and everything becomes a lot clearer. So, what is BTFA? BTFA is a framework to help shift what we call resistance. And as you can see, it follows and it runs in both directions of it. We believe we've got a wiring pattern in our brains. We think it fires. We feel because it releases chemicals, and the behaviors we see on the outside is that how we act, and the attitudes, the assumptions, they're all the A's that come with that act. But it runs backwards because we interact with the world. That triggers this defensive emotional response that we think about, and that changes the way the brain's wired. So it's this really interesting sort of top down, bottom up, outward in, inward out process, all happening all the time in milliseconds. But unless the brain has got a wiring pattern that allows it to determine safety, you won't get anything new to be accepted, right? People won't assimilate or integrate new things if their brain's saying this is a threat to me, this is risky, this is dangerous. So you're not going to get change to stick unless you get that belief to shift first. And when we use the word belief, as we just explained, we mean that wiring pattern in somebody's head. And that changes naturally anyway, doesn't it, mate? It's neurogenesis, it's neuroplasticity, it's all these long neuro words that mean the brain's designed to change every single day. I mean, again, anything you can add there, Levent, in terms of those 3 bullet points?
No, just one thing probably. In business life, what we look at is the actions of people. Most of the time, we just see how people act, and we name them good or bad, right or wrong, just depending on how they act. But behind their actions, people are their brains. They have feelings, they have thoughts, and they have beliefs. Unless we focus or learn how to focus on beliefs, we cannot change their actions. Um, most of the time, we believe that people act randomly because when we cannot elaborate the reasons of their actions, we cannot explain why they act the way they do. In fact, brains produce these behaviors, actions, following a mechanism, cause and effect mechanism. And at the root cause of all these actions lies beliefs. We think according to what we believe, and we feel according to what we think, and we act accordingly. So trying to change actions of people at work, trying to control people, push them to do what we want is pointless. It's never sustainable.
Yeah, it just doesn't get to root cause, does it? Which is ironic because so many people in the change space, promote root cause thinking and root cause problem solving, and yet we don't ever get to root cause of human action and behavior because up until now, we haven't had the neuroscience. Now we've got it. It's easy to explain, and that's why we're seeing it make such a big difference. Brilliant. I'm just looking at time. We've got 8 minutes left. So, I mean, if we whip through these to make sure we get to the question. But yeah, I mean, if we talk about applying BTFA, AI is such a big topic in the market. I've been to conferences in Athens and Dubai and Germany over the last couple of months to speak on these topics. And AI is prevalent everywhere, as we all know. But let's bring it back to BTFA and just look at these two different beliefs that might already exist in two different brains, right? One belief is, oh God, AI is going to replace me. Oh no, and the other belief is, oh, fantastic. Look what this is going to enable me to do. It's going to support me. And so when you think of that framing, when that is the wiring pattern firing in people's heads about a subject matter, AI in this case, then the response on the first one is going to be fear, right? And if people are scared, then because of the way the HPA axis links to cortisol release and that whole fight flight mechanism, it just leads to inaction and other psychological avoidance tactics, those kind of things. So you're not going to get people to move forward, and therefore, if people aren't moving forward, progress in the business isn't going to be accelerated as much as it possibly can be, and therefore you're going to lag behind the competition. So again, root cause of business performance is belief. And there's the corollary to that, the positive, which is if AI supports me, I'm going to feel safe. This is great. I've got a better future. The brain's a prediction machine. It's going to look and think this is a better future. I can move towards this. And that's what we call engagement, because that triggers the release of a lot of different chemicals. So, we're talking in facts here, but it really helps to highlight that if there's humans involved with adopting AI, which necessarily there has to be, if you don't get that belief bit right, then you're not going to move forward as fast as you possibly could in your change efforts. And that's not just AI, that's Lean, Six Sigma, anything. But Levent, can we convince somebody that they should have a positive belief about AI if they haven't got one?
It's very difficult. In fact, nearly impossible to convince people. In fact, convincing people or persuading people is rather difficult. Instead, we can try to identify with them, um, especially their feelings. We should take their feelings into account. What do they feel and what do they believe? Because these beliefs are at the root of their thoughts and feelings anyway. So if they think that, if they believe that AI will replace them, we can open the situation. I mean, it's not always the case that AI will replace people. We were discussing recently with a company that they had a problem with an employee. She was not helping maintenance guys to install the robot because she was thinking that the robot will replace her. And they were blaming her to resist change. And I asked them what you will do when the robot will be successful. they said they will fire her. So it's normal that they will resist change. I would resist change also. But it was such a big company that can do performance appraisals at the end of the year among thousands of employees. If she is more successful, more engaged, if she did her best to install that robot, etc., the company also should do its best to keep her, right? So it should be such an HR procedure. I think it was a case of lack of communication. Many things can be done so that people will not resist change.
Yeah, but convincing, coercion, just the human brain has got to determine safety for itself. It's not something you can tell it with facts to do, right? It's not going to change the way the brain's wired by saying, "Here are the facts. These are the statements I want to offer you to tell you why you should think this way." That's not how it works. The brain is scanning the environment. It will take cues from all those signals, and it will determine for itself whether there's something to be scared of or not, or whether it can engage in something or not. The leader's job is to create the conditions in which brains can perform at their best and engage with those outcome objectives on behalf of the organization, right? It's not, you can't there's a great psychological phrase, telling is destructive, and it is, because often when you go around telling people what they should think, and it's going to trigger a negative response, and you're going to get more defensiveness. So so how do you design change for the brain? Well, summarizing some of the things we just said here, I guess, start with beliefs, because that we mean wiring patterns. And if you don't get that right, then you're not going to, the brain with a different wiring pattern is going to frame the world in a way that protects itself. And it's going to do that in the most glucose efficient way possible. So if you're not focusing on what do we believe about this, what's good, bad, right, or wrong in this situation for those people involved, we're not going to ever get anywhere near to how they're going to feel about it, and therefore how they're going to act and react towards it. Once you establish that, then you can think about creating a connection. And again, Levent and I were having a conversation earlier talking about different things we're seeing with different clients we're working with. And it just becomes more and more apparent every day, every week, every hour that we're talking to people that have been through BTFA, learned the approach, and are trying to apply it. That when you get that human connection, it changes outcomes. It's just so powerful, but it's in a way that we can explain with the way the brain works. And it's essential, like we've just said, to take emotions into account and create that environment where brains work at their best. So these are the things that make such a massive difference to change programs, change efforts, and overall company performance. I think here we're just saying again, um, again, I'm going to have to move this. I've got a continuous improvement opportunity for us. We help leaders do this every day. So we're going to change the way we lay out these slides. I haven't got to keep moving things around. But just for the benefit of anyone on the call that's not completely clear on what we do here at Ducks in a Row, it's we've got this online course that's established. It took us 7,000 hours to create it. It's based on the latest from neuroscience, and we're seeing it transform the way leaders see themselves and each other and the way they approach change in faster, shorter timeframes than we've ever experienced. All the many years and decades we were teaching lean tools and techniques and approaching it, the same way the rest of the market does. So it's an incredibly effective course. Welcome to come along. Do reach out if you're interested. Beyond that, we offer coaching for change in culture and strategy and development support. But look, where are we doing for time? It's 20 past now, and we've run out of time for the question. Very quickly, what's going on when we've got too many change plans at the same time while staying stuck in firefighting mode? Well, it's the fact the brain can only process so much. That from a subconscious point of view, there's about 2 million bits of data per second being processed. At a conscious level, there's 50 bits of data being processed every second. And if we've got too much inbound sensory stimulus, as we like to call it here at Ducks in a Row, there's too much going on, and that's bells and whistles from apps. It's just too many different things pulling on out for our attention, which is an acetylcholine issue in the prefrontal cortex. It's just going to raise cortisol levels, and when we raise cortisol levels, it has a negative effect on other chemicals in the brain, so we don't adapt so quickly, and we also make mistakes because it uses that glucose energy in other areas of the brain and not in the prefrontal cortex where we think logically. So if we put our teams, ourselves, or our colleagues in that situation where we've just got so much coming in from the inbox, from different project meetings, and there's just too much to juggle, the brain just simply can't process it all. And then you make mistakes, and when you make mistakes because you're not thinking straight, it leads to processes not going right. You end up having to try and fix quality problems, firefighting, safety issues crop up, and that's why you end up stuck in firefighting mode. So the answer is give the human brains involved, what they need to be able to work at their best. And to be able to do that and know what that looks like, you have to know a bit about how brains function and what they need. So, no time to cover any more than that right now today, but there's a little bit talking to that whole thing about too many change plans, which we know is a consistent problem globally because we see it in so many of our clients. Levent, final word, mate, and then we'll stop the presentation. Oh, all good. You're on mute. You're on mute. I know. I think we started a minute late. That means we're 1 minute over because it's 22 minutes past now. Thanks to everybody for joining us. It's been great to see you, or let you see us, as more to the point, because we didn't see you at all. Look forward to next one next month. Do join us again. See you soon. Cheers. Bye.